in my opinion, sharper and more insightful as a cultural, personal, psychological, and political commentator than almost all of my academic colleagues. And I don't think she has a PhD or anything. She's just brilliant. She's really, really brilliant. And one of her essays is on how you can either seek truth or activism. And she wasn't condemning. She said you need, to make such changes. Sometimes you need to make changes, that there's some injustice or just things aren't working well. It's not ridiculous for people to embrace activism from time to time, but that activism and truth are in conflict. And that if you're doing one, you pretty much can't do the other. You can pretend to do the other, but you really can't do the other. And it's just that it's just a brilliant essay. Because she's brilliant, she articulated it way better than I am doing it here, and I just really recommend it. I don't remember what she calls her Substack, but anyone who's listening is interested. If you just Google search Sarah Hayter Substack, her Substack will come right up. Then you got to look for this article.
Yeah, what you're saying reminds me of Jonathan Haidt did a similar article actually for Heterodox Academy, where it was basically
Yeah,
just you can only pick one telos, really. You got to pick either truth
yeah,
or social justice, but we seem to be trying to marry the two, which I don't
yeah,
think is going to end well.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, one of the problems you have is activists think they're acting on the truth, and actually, there are times when, if you really know something to be true, the activism and truth seeking can be synergistic. So consider just something purely scientific. So you think that humans should reach to the stars, right? Okay. Well, first you need the science that will provide the technology that would lead to inventions that would allow us to reach the stars. And then like the first step was going to the moon, and maybe the next step is going to Mars, right? But once that's available, to then advocate that we should do it is not ridiculous, right?
Mm.
And it is not compromising truth. So you could do that with illness, whether it's the COVID vaccine or, in third world countries that, in the worst of the impoverished conditions, they're often unsanitary, and there are like not really that expensive ways to clean things up and improve people's health. So those kinds of activism that are really based on clear, sound science, like
Mm.
objective science, are not ridiculous and not compromising science I don't think, in any way. But the problem comes in when people erroneously believe they are acting on science that is really dubious, or just pretending, exploiting science for political activist purposes. We have that all the time.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah, no, I understand that. I'm I'm not a social scientist. I'm in the climate science realm myself. So it's certainly been interesting in the last few years to see a lot of the activists who exploits some of the things going on in my own field. So yeah, I get that sentiment very much so. But I also like I tend to agree, although with a bit of a caveat in the notion that, like, yes, if you're doing science and helping to fix a problem in society or something along that line, you can do that bit of activism and not be compromising things. But it also, at the same time, potentially opens the door to compromising things at the same time. So it's, I
right.
guess, I guess a good follow on question for that is like, if you want to do that, how do you do it in such a manner that you don't inadvertently end up compromising your ideals and becoming more interested in social activism than, say, you do your research and you find, oh well, this isn't fulfilling a narrative that I really like. Well, if you're the scholar who's dedicated to truth seeking, you would go with that thing in your research, even though it's probably not going to earn you a whole lot of friends.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so that's, you have all these social processes wrapped up into this, when, I mean, this is putting the final touches on a chapter on academic tribalism. That's where, sort of my um, uh, characterization of the perspectives mob as really, classic authoritarianism sort of comes in. Um, and, and so there is that risk. There absolutely is that risk. The I mean, so I'm not going to go down that road yet, although I'm happy to. The your question was, how do you avoid doing it? And I believe, I don't know that there's a single answer, but one answer is to really understand how uncertain most new science and especially social science is. This was the recent time, and I recently gave a talk on academic misinformation. And sort of the centerpiece of that were 4 points. The sort of the general point was that there are lots of general reasons, general scientific reasons not to treat the peer-reviewed academic literature as establishing scientific facts. And you'll be on, if you can wrap your brain around this, it'll be, if what you're interested in is doing scientifically justified activism, and you first wrap your brain around this, you'll be in a much better position because you won't be leaping to conclusions that are not justified and then wreaking all sorts of damage based on things you believe to be true that are not actually true.
Did you like that video? Are you curious about the rest of the video? Because that clip came from an episode of SciChat Saturday, and the full episode is linked in the description. As always, stay curious.